Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something truly magical and deeply ingrained in the soul of Ireland. It's folklore. And we're not just talking about leprechauns and shamrocks here. We're talking about beings of immense scale, the giants who supposedly sculpted the very land, and then, on the flip side, the miniature, hidden denizens of the other world, often referred to as the little people. It's a fascinating dichotomy, isn't it?
It absolutely is, Peter. And what's crucial to understand is that these figures aren't just quaint stories from a bygone era. They are living examples, of how the land itself, collective memory, and even shifts in religious belief have profoundly shaped and continue to shape Irish culture and the Irish psyche. They're not just remnants of the past. They're active participants in understanding who the Irish are and who they were.
That's a fantastic point, Martin. It's not just about a story, it's about what the story tells us about the people who told it. Let's start with the big guys, literally. When you think of Irish giants, one name immediately springs to mind for many: Fionn Mac Cumhail, or Finn McCool. Now, Fionn is often depicted as a warrior, a hero, but his stories also lean heavily into him being a giant, a land shaper. Can you explain that connection for us?
Certainly. Fionn Mac Cumhail from the Fenian cycle is arguably the most iconic giant in Irish folklore. While he's renowned as a hunter-warrior of extraordinary strength, many of his tales transcend mere human feats and delve into what we call geological myths. He's a figure of such immense scale and power that he quite literally alters the landscape around him. He's not just big, he's landscape-defining. He represents that awesome, sometimes overwhelming power of nature, but anthropomorphized.
And the quintessential example of this, I think, has to be the Giant's Causeway, right? It's one of Ireland's most famous natural wonders, and everyone knows the story of Fionn and the Causeway. For those who might not, Martin, could you recount the legend for us?
Of course. The Giant's Causeway in County Antrim is a breathtaking formation of hexagonal basalt columns, and the legend of Fionn Mac Cumhail provides its most famous origin story. The tale goes that Fionn built this massive causeway as a bridge to Scotland, intending to cross the sea to challenge his great rival, the Scottish giant Benandonner. In some versions, Fionn quickly realizes that Benandonner is far more colossal than he is, and Fionn finds himself in a bit of a pickle, feeling quite intimidated. This is where his incredible wife, Una, steps in, showcasing true Irish wit and ingenuity.
Ah, the clever wife. Always a good plot twist.
Precisely. Una, seeing Fionn's fear, quickly disguises him as a baby, wrapping him in blankets and putting him in a huge cradle. When Benandonner finally crosses the causeway and arrives at their home, he sees this enormous baby. The sheer size of this infant makes Benandonner absolutely terrified, thinking, if the baby is this huge, how enormous must the father be? He flees back to Scotland in a panic, tearing up the causeway as he goes, leaving behind the disjointed columns we see today.
That's such a brilliant story. It explains a natural wonder, but it also humanizes the giant, showing him to be fearful, even vulnerable, and reliant on his wife's intelligence. It's not just about brute strength.
Exactly. Folklorists emphasize that these are classic etiological myths, narratives crafted to explain natural phenomena. The scale of Fionn reflects the awesome, often unpredictable power of nature itself. We, as humans, have always sought to anthropomorphize overwhelming geological features, to give them a story, a personality. Fionn embodies that. He's powerful, yes, but he's also very human, prone to rivalry, fear, and, as you noted, needing the quick thinking of his wife. It grounds the supernatural in something relatable.
It really does. From the colossal, land-shaping giants, we now pivot to the other end of the spectrum, the little people. And I think for many, the little peoples immediately conjures images of leprechauns. But, as I understand it, the reality of the Ao-See, the true little people of Irish folklore, is far more ancient, complex, and frankly, a lot less cuddly than the modern leprechaun image.
You've hit the nail on the head, Peter. The term little people is often a misnomer, or at least a simplification. The Ao-See, pronounced Ishi, literally means the people of the mounds or the people of peace. And crucially, historically they weren't tiny sprites. They were often depicted as beings of human size, beautiful, yes, but also terrifying. They lived in a parallel dimension, the otherworld, with ancient burial mounds or fairy forts often seen as entrances to their realm. Their face, as it were, has constantly shifted, reflecting the evolving relationship the Irish had with the spiritual world.
So, they weren't necessarily small in stature, but little in the sense that they were hidden, secretive, living in a world apart. And these weren't just random spirits. Many believe they have a very grand, ancient lineage, don't they?
Absolutely. Many folklorists firmly believe the Aussie are the mythological remnants of the Tuatha De Danann, the ancient race of gods and heroes who ruled Ireland before the mortal Milesians arrived. When the Milesians came, the Tuatha De Danann didn't vanish. They retreated into the hollow hills, into the otherworld, becoming the hidden, powerful fae we now call the Aussie. They are not merely small, they are other, and their nature is far from benign or whimsical. They are governed by very strict moral codes. While they could be generous to mortals who showed them respect and deference, especially regarding their territories like fairy forts, hawthorn trees, or certain streams, they were terrifyingly dangerous when slighted.
Terrifyingly dangerous. That's quite a contrast to the cheerful, pot-of-gold-hoarding leprechaun. So, we're talking about beings associated with things like sudden illness, people going missing, fairy strokes, or even changelings, where a human child is swapped with a fairy child. That's a deep, primal fear embedded in those stories.
Precisely. The ancient Aussie demanded fear and respect because they represented the uncontrollable aspects of nature and fate. They were arbitrary, powerful, and mysterious. To disturb a fairy fort or cut down a hawthorn tree was to invite misfortune. These stories weren't just entertainment, they served a purpose. To instill respect for the unseen, to explain the inexplicable, and to maintain a certain societal order tied to the natural world. They were an explanation for tragedy, for illness, for things beyond human understanding. You certainly didn't go chasing them for a pot of gold.
Which brings us neatly to the leprechaun. How did this figure, who is now so globally recognizable and, dare I say, almost trivialized, become the dominant image of the little peoples?
The leprechaun from the Irish leprechaun is indeed arguably the most famous subgroup of the little people, but he's a much later and, as you say, diminished figure in the grand scheme of Irish mythology. He's typically a solitary figure, often described as a shoemaker or cobbler, grumpy, solitary, and notoriously possessive of his hidden wealth, the famous pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. His transformation, however, is a fascinating case study in how folklore evolves and, sometimes, gets diluted.
How so? What led to his shift from a minor local spirit to, essentially, a global mascot?
Well, his appearance and role evolved significantly in the 19th and 20th centuries. He started as a relatively minor, sometimes red-coated local spirit, but through popular culture, particularly in America, and increasingly with tourism, he transformed. He became the green-clad, harmless, often mischievous figure we recognize today. This homogenization, as I often lament, really stripped away the true mythological depth and complexity of the Aussie. The original little peoples demanded respect, fear, and careful negotiation. The modern leprechaun, by contrast, largely requires only mild amusement. It's a commercialized version, a simplified caricature, detached from its powerful spiritual roots.
That's a powerful distinction. It sounds like a shift from a belief system that dictated behavior and warned of danger to a charming narrative that's good for a laugh or a souvenir. It almost reflects a societal move away from genuine belief in the supernatural towards a more secular, modern perspective.
Precisely. It shows a changing relationship with the unseen. The Aussie, in their truer form, represented the untamed, the sacred, the things that couldn't be quantified or controlled by human reason. The leprechaun, while fun, has become a symbol of something tamed, packaged, and ultimately disempowered. It's a very telling evolution for a folklorist.
So, if these stories are so ancient and some of the beliefs have been, let's say, softened over time, do these figures and their associated beliefs still hold sway in modern Ireland? Are there still modern encounters?
Absolutely, Peter. The persistence of belief, and indeed the reporting of what people interpret as modern encounters, is crucial for understanding the living tradition of Irish folklore. While fewer people might literally expect to see a leprechaun, the respect and wariness associated with the older Aussie traditions remain deeply embedded, particularly in rural Ireland, and often these encounters connect directly to specific, powerful locations.
You mean like the famous fairy forts?
Exactly. The fairy forts, or raths as they're known, ancient circular earthworks. Even today you'll hear countless stories, often told with a wink and a nod, but still taken very seriously, about misfortune striking those who disturb them. Farmers will divert roads, build around them rather than dare to touch them. There are tales of machinery breaking down, livestock falling ill, unexplained accidents, all attributed to disturbing a fairy fort. It's a testament to the enduring power of these beliefs, even if people don't openly admit to believing in fairies.
I've heard those stories myself. There's a sort of respectful apprehension, a better safe than sorry attitude. It's almost as if the stories serve as a warning, even if the explicit belief has faded for some.
It is precisely that. These encounters, whether they're interpreted as supernatural or simply as a string of bad luck, act as cultural anchors. They serve to remind people of the past, of the inherent wildness and mystery of the landscape, and of the limits of modern rationalism. When someone reports seeing an unexplained light in a marsh or hearing music emanating from an ancient mound, they are often interpreting these natural events through a lens inherited from centuries of local belief. It's the landscape speaking through a cultural filter.
So it's not just superstition, but almost a psychological and cultural defense mechanism in a way for people to stay connected to something beyond the purely tangible.
That's a great way to put it. From a contemporary folklorist perspective, these stories act as a check on modern materialism. The little people, in their original guise, represent an untamed, unquantifiable aspect of existence that resists total scientific categorization. They remind us that not everything can be explained away, that there's still mystery in the world, and for people deeply connected to their local geography, an encounter reaffirms that the world is more vibrant, hidden, and mysterious than it often appears on the surface.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it. The landscape speaks. From Fionn Mac Cumhail shaping the causeway with his giant footsteps, to the subtle, watchful presence of the Ow Sea in the ancient hills, it really illustrates how deeply interwoven these stories are with the very fabric of Ireland itself. It's a continuous dialogue between people and their land, isn't it?
It truly is, Peter. And while few modern Irish people genuinely expect to trip over a leprechaun with a pot of gold, the underlying respect and wariness associated with the Ow Sea remain deeply embedded in the culture. It's a subtle, surviving recognition that the deepest parts of Ireland's past, its myths, its sense of wonder, its connection to the unseen, still hold sway over the present. It's a living tradition, breathing alongside us, even in our modern world.
That's a fantastic thought to end on, Martin. Thank you so much for shedding light on the fascinating and often misunderstood giants and little people of Ireland. It's been a truly insightful journey.
My pleasure, Peter. Always a joy to delve into the heart of Irish folklore.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this adventure into the heart of Irish legend. We'll be back next time with another captivating topic. Until then, keep an eye on those fairy forts, and maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the landscape whispering its ancient secrets.